Hello and welcome to session 1 of the Candidates Forum for the Fargo School Board June 9th election. Thank you, candidates, for being here, and to the City of Fargo for hosting the forum and providing the services of filming and making these videos accessible to the public. My name is Rachel Hoffman, and I'm with the League of Women Voters of the Red River Valley. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization that encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. The primary way we do this is through voter forums. The forums for the June 9th elections, including City Commission, County Commission for District 3, the Fargo School Board, and the Fargo Park Board, will be available on public access and online through our Facebook page and YouTube. So the questions for tonight's forum, this is set up a little differently than we usually do due to wanting to social distance, so we do not have an audience here tonight. So all of the questions have been solicited online in advance from the public. We had many questions, so we did a selection of those, and we'll get through as many as we can. And this has been divided into 2 sessions since we do have 13 candidates tonight. So we will be starting with the first 7 now, and then starting at in an hour, we'll start again with the next 6 candidates. The candidates have not seen the questions, and we'll be using the same questions for each session. So we will be starting with 1-minute opening statements. We'll be ending with 1-minute closing statements, and we'll be doing the questions in between. Again, there's a timer for 1 minute at the back of the room, and we will start with opening statements. And Brandiani, if you would like to do your first opening statement.
Well, thank you so much, Rachel, for inviting us to this open forum for everybody to participate in. And it's too bad that we don't have anybody in the audience, but that's okay, it'll work. My name is Brandiani, and I have lived in Fargo my whole life. I am a Fargo North graduate, so I was very involved in everything with Fargo North as a graduate, and the last 4 years I have been on the school board, and I do feel that we've made a lot of progress, and we are at our goal of continuing to be the best school district in North Dakota. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Eric Evenson.
Hi. My name is Eric Evenson. I want to start by thanking the League of Women Voters. It really is an awesome organization, and I really appreciate this opportunity to get up here and share how I feel about the issues facing Fargo Public Schools. I'm running for school board because I have the skills, I have the education, I have the talents, and I have the experience to bring a unique perspective to the school board. I'm a teacher. I'm not a retired teacher. I didn't used to be a teacher. I'm a teacher right now. I met with students this morning. I met with other teachers this afternoon, virtually, of course. I also have the training. I've earned my master's degree in educational leadership. So what I can bring to the board is someone that sees the big picture, someone who can help guide us to long-term solutions. But what's unique about my perspective is that while we're looking at the broad view of education, I bring frontline experience.
Thank you. Nikki Gullickson.
Good evening. Thank you, Rachel, and thank you to the League of Women Voters to have an opportunity, especially in these crazy times, for us to be able to be in front of the people that make these important decisions. I am married to Greg Gullickson, who came up through the Fargo schools. We have 3 children within Fargo schools. I have been a PTA member from elementary through middle school, and now this fall starting into high school. And I am excited to be a PTA volunteer because we advocate for all children, and we do so at all levels. And I have been active with Fargo Public Schools for almost 10 years now because of my 3 children. I have a 4th grader, 6th grader, and 8th grader, so we will be here for a while. And I believe with the experience that I have, both locally, statewide, and at the federal level, I can bring a different perspective to our board. It's important to me that we have communication, both going to the board and coming from the board.
Thank you. Seth Holden.
Good evening. Thanks, Rachel, and I want to thank the League of Women Voters for giving us this opportunity. You know, with the crisis, campaigning is a little bit difficult right now, so having the opportunity to share our views and answer some questions is great. I am obviously live in Fargo. I remodel homes for a living. I own, hold, and restoration and remodel. Both my wife and I graduated from Fargo schools. Both of us graduated from Fargo South. Quite a few years apart, actually, but and I'm running because I firmly believe that education is the foundation on everything that's built, and all the successes that we as a community and as a country can have all starts with education, and it all starts with teachers and the students. And I'm running because I think I can bring a different perspective to the board, not being running for office before. So,
Thank you. Jim Johnson.
Thank you, Rachel. I want to start by thanking the citizens of Fargo. Without the support of all of the property owners, Fargo School District wouldn't be the district it is. We are blessed by having a community that is focused on education and committed to it. I also want to thank them for supporting me in the past. I'd be more than willing to serve for another term. And I want to give a special shout out to the League of Women Voters of Red River Valley. This was not an easy challenge during these times to figure out how to do it, and thank you for doing it.
Thank you. Victoria Johnson.
Hi, thank you so much for hosting this. I want to say congratulations to everybody who entered this. My name is Victoria Johnson. I'm originally from East Africa. I attended the Fargo Public School and I graduated from Fargo South High. I have 2 children who are currently attending the Fargo Public School. One is in special education and one is in general education. Having children in both general education and special education gave me the clear and meaningful understanding of what is happening within our Fargo Public School. I am a founder of a grassroots organization called the Families United for Advocacy. I have a background in business management, leadership, and healthcare. I currently serve on the North Dakota DPI Special Education IDEA Advisory Board. I also serve on the Division of Special Health Services Advisory Board. I'm also a former Cass County Juvenile Justice Red Committee member. I also volunteered with the Early Head Start, Dakota Boys and Girls Ranch, and First Link.
Thank you. And Robin Key.
Hi, thank you. My name is Robin Key. I have lived in Fargo for about 10 years. I do have a 14-year-old son who will be at Davies High School next year playing football. He is part of both general education and special education, so we see both sides of that. I am running for school board because I kind of feel like there needs to be some sort of change. And I think that with my unique abilities and the things that I see coming from a student's point of view, I can bring another viewpoint to the Fargo School Board. Thank you.
Thank you. And next we will be starting with Eric for the first question, and that we're going to get right in with kind of more of the trending topic. And that question is, how do you think schools should address reopening during the times of COVID?
Well, I think what we have to do is take it slow. Things have been changing so fast throughout the pandemic, and it's going to continue to change throughout the summer. So we have to take our cues from the federal government, from the state government. They're really dictating what we're able to do. I've been meeting with teachers already, trying to figure out a plan on what we should do next year. And so there's so many different possibilities. The people in the schools are working diligently to try and come up with what we should do. There's talks of like a soft opening or changing the schedule so students only have to block schedules. And then now that's at the high school level, or in the elementary where they stay in their classroom and the teachers move instead of the students moving. It's going to have to be collaborative, and we're going to have to work together, and we're going to have to be nimble and able to adjust quickly.
Thank you. And same question, Nikki Gullickson.
Thank you. Yes, I think we need to be careful. I think we need to be thoughtful. I think we need to move slowly, and we need to follow those guidelines. As my current position as PTA state president, I am in touch with presidents from all of our states. And it is a nice lifeline to have, per se, because we can find out what's going on in other states. What are they talking about? I'm thrilled to hear the teachers are talking about it already, and I would have suspected so. So we can always reach out and find out if there's something different that we can do or how to blend that in. But it can't just be an open the doors and welcome everybody, because we have a lot of things we need to be concerned about.
Thank you. And Seth Holden.
I think we need to take things really slow and be smart about how we go about this. And I think that every community is different. We can't necessarily look at other communities and do the same thing. What might work in a small Page, North Dakota district or Manhattan district is going to be different than us, because we have different publics and different densities. I think that this has definitely shown us that using technology is not the same as being in class, and I think the teachers would agree that they want to be back in class, but we have to really be smart about this so that we don't make things worse. So
Thank you. Jim Johnson.
Thank you. Well, I'd agree with what everybody's said so far. We're going to have to listen to the guidance, make slow but thorough decisions, and probably just as important is to figure out what we're going to do if we have to close down again. We're going to have students and families that may not feel comfortable coming back to school when we can open them up again, whenever that day comes. So we may have to have a parallel track of classroom instruction and online instruction. We're certainly not staffed up to do that today. But these are going to be the decisions that the board and the administration of every school district in America is going to be faced with. I'm hopeful, like most people, that we'll get through this. It'll be a one and done deal. But I think we've learned a lesson that the unknown can happen. And we are going to have a contingency plan for if we reopen and get shut back down again, how do we function in that scenario? And how do we address the staff and students that aren't going to be comfortable coming back to the building because they might be a high-risk person?
Thank you. Victoria Johnson.
Thank you for that question. I agree with every board member that's up here. I think if we do open, we need to, of course, open slowly. One thing we have to also, I think our school need to keep in mind is that our children as well are going through this changes, and there's so much mental health. When they come back to school, they're going to be so worried as well. So I think we need to make sure that we have that support services in place for our children when they come back, that that counselors will be available, mental health services will be available for them, that they can access that, and that our teachers should not be able to deal with all that, because it's going to be really fearful for our children as well. Just working with family, I can tell you that I hear that all the time. Families are worried, my child has, health issues, what if the school open, what am I gonna do? So I think the mental health support services will be really key to have that in place when we open.
Thank you. Robin Key.
Thank you. I would also agree with what everyone else is saying. It does need to be a slow opening. Once it is decided that schools will reopen, we need to be aware of the personal health of our teachers, our staff members, and of course our students. The kids are going to be worried, and some of them are not going to want to go back to school, and they're not going to be comfortable with that. So I like Jim's option of having the two separate tracks.
Thank you. And Brandiani.
Yes, I agree with what everybody else said as well. We do have to do the soft opening and be North Dakota smart, as our governor has said many times before. And we also do need to follow the rules of what the governor, the mayor, and Cass Public Health has. In Sanford, they have the numbers, they have all of the facts and what is going on with the COVID right now. And as far as working together, we do need to collaborate on ideas on how we can have more training. You know, what's going to be a day at school during this pandemic, and how we all can work together just to collaborate the ideas that we have. So, thank you.
Thank you. And for the second question, we'll be starting with Nikki Gullickson. And that question will be, how do you feel about boundaries and building changes? And in particular, this questioner was wondering how you feel about a boundary change that would make a family drive by one school to get to their new designated school.
Thank you for that question. I've had an enormous amount of conversations over the last few days about this particular subject. To start with, I guess I'm glad that we held off on building right now. I think we need to dig a little deeper. I was part of the task force this past summer that took a look at all of that, and we looked long-term. We had city planners come in. We aren't as necessarily as overcrowded as we are underutilized. We have 2 high schools that have availability. We have 1 high school almost at capacity. I am not against building, but I'm not sure that the time is right now. I also had a conversation just yesterday about boundaries, and we have to recognize that some of our families have been through several boundary changes, and their kids within their own households have gone to different schools, elementary, middle, and high school. So I think we need to be mindful of that as well.
Thank you. Seth Holden.
Thank you. I am for boundary changes before building until we are bursting at the seams and can't do anything. David Paulson's right, we're not overcrowded, we're unbalanced. And I'd like to see more collaboration with our city leaders, because the city leaders can incentivize people and families staying in North Fargo, so that we don't have, because if we don't do something about this and we let North Fargo completely dilapidate and everybody leaves and they all go and they all build new south, we are going to have kids driving by a school to get to another school, because this whole side of town will be, dead, and the whole south side will just continue to grow. So I think we need to team up with other city leaders and come up with innovative ways to stop this from happening, so that we don't have to make difficult decisions as board members.
Thank you. Jim Johnson.
Thank you. First off, I think it's important to understand what we as a society in Fargo community have done demographically over the last 30 to 40 years, because that explains what we're dealing with right now. When North High opened, before Central burnt to the ground, it opened and it was just about at capacity. And its border was Main Avenue to as far north as the city of Fargo reaches. Back then, the average household had anywhere from 3.5, I don't know how you have a half, 3.5 to 4 kids per household in Fargo. Today, the number is 1.5. So it isn't like we have empty houses in North Fargo. It's not like we don't have families in North Fargo. It's that the families are smaller in size than they were back when I went to South High. So first and foremost, we have to recognize that we have to maintain enough students at all of our high schools, all of our secondary buildings, to provide the programming that we need. So until we have adjusted boundaries to accomplish that, there certainly is no need to build. There will be, but it's probably 5 to 6 years out.
Thank you. Victoria Johnson on boundaries and building changes.
I agree with everyone. I think we need to redraw the boundary line, because if you look at where I live in my location, we have student where will fall onto the Fargo South school boundary line, but yet they're going all the way to Davies. So I think we need to redraw the boundary line, and we need to balance it. We can't just keep building, because we got to think of a cost. There's also operation costs, right? So that also needs to be really looked at careful before we decided that we're going to build a new school. And we also, I agree with Nikki as well. We have to think of our students' safety, because a lot of those families that work, their children ride bikes to school. And so we have to also be mindful. So this is something that we have to have everybody at the table get an input from not only stakeholders, but also family, and get their voice at the table before that we make that changes.
Thank you. And Robin Key.
Thank you. My thought on building a new school in the next few years is I think it would be foolish immediately. I think that changing boundaries would be a better option, considering that the Fargo North building is not utilized the way that it could be, and it's not even close to capacity like Davies is, and South is a little bit closer to. I think that we, especially if Fargo South continues to grow the way it has been growing, we will need to build another building at some point in time, probably in the next 6 to 10 years. But that's not something that I would foresee tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you. Brandiani.
I am in favor of building, but in the world right now and what's happening, I am not in favor of doing that right now. It is going to have to happen regardless. If you look at the numbers and the projections, in the next 10 years, we are going to be full. What I do suggest is I understand that there is room over at Fargo South, and I understand that there's room over at North. We have plenty of programs that could always, backfill some of that space. We're always running out of spaces for everything, especially if we're putting in, stuff to do with CTE and the auto programs over at South High. So, there's no reason why we can't elaborate on that if we need to do that as far as space goes. And as far as the boundary changes go, I absolutely disagree with moving them 5 miles away from their house and putting them in a, travel, I should say, that comes with safety. Trying to travel to the school, that absolutely does come with safety risks as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Eric Evenson.
Thanks. Well, the problem with changing boundary lines is that it's cruel. There are people that live 7 miles from Carl Ben Eielson Middle School and 2 miles from Discovery Middle School. And these are the people that we're going to make move. I live near Discovery Middle School. And I live 3 times closer to Carl Ben than the people that are going to be expected to move boundaries. And the problem is that we call it a long-term solution. Okay, it's not a long-term solution. Moving boundaries is going to save us 5 or 6 years, you heard here. I think that's conservative, even if we move the boundary lines. The way that the schools are set up geographically, we are still going to have to build a new school in, I would say, 4 years, 3-4 years. You've heard 5, 6, you've heard 10. We don't know what's going to happen. But in either case, we're going to have to build a new school. And I know it's popular to say, no, I don't want to spend $60 million, but it's not right to the people that are going to have to move when they're going to get a new school in 5 years anyway.
Thank you. For the next question, we'll be starting with Seth Holden, and that is, how could the board strengthen its relationship with the community, City Commission, Park Board, and FEA?
I feel like a board member should sit on the City Planning Commission, and I think that would probably help the situation that I discussed earlier about boundaries and having a voice from the board at that City Planning Commission so that we can curb some of this, unbalance. I think maybe a liaison to the City Commission would help, because I think if the City Commission is going to be giving tax breaks to businesses, well, that's funds that can go into the school system, and I think that that the board should have a seat at that table if they're going to give our funds away, basically. So, I think just having seats at the table will help.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim Johnson.
Well, first of all, I think currently we have very good relationships with both the city and the park board, and we actually do have a liaison to the planning commission. We have a member on the community development commission, and our administrative team meets with the city and park board leadership monthly. So I think those are really good, strong partnerships already. There is never enough we can do to build stronger relationships with the broader community. Each and every board member I've served with certainly has a network in the community that they're communicating with and hearing from, but the more we can do to reach out, in particular to those people that might not be as engaged. Probably 70% of our community does not have a student in a school building, and those folks are taxpayers that are funding our school system as well. As far as getting stronger relationships with the FEA, that's just an ongoing, constant communication. I think it's getting better, but you'd have to ask them to find out for sure.
Thank you. Victoria Johnson.
I have not sat on the school board, and so if Jim Johnson is saying they already have that relationship, they just have to strengthen it and maybe inviting the school, the city park or commissioner at some of those decisions that Fargo Public School is trying to make when it comes to those boundary changes and what's happening in their school, and maybe inviting them to those meetings as well so they can actually hear it.
Thank you. Robin Key. And if anyone needs a repeat of the question, just always ask and we can do that as well.
Thank you. Listening to Jim, I have not been at many school board meetings, so listening to Jim and knowing that there are liaisons to some of those boards, I think maybe a little bit more open communication. I'm not sure how open their communication has been, but more communication is always good. That's always a good thing. And I agree, you can always do more and it's never enough.
Thank you. Brandy Ani.
Yes, Jim is correct with everything that we do with the city and parks. And we do also meet with the city and parks and the school board twice a year. So we do have the joint meeting with them as well. And I do agree with pretty much everything that all of you guys said. I think it's more of a collaboration, and communication is the main key. And what we just have to do is just try to keep that open communication and try to engage the people who don't have students. Like Jim said, there's about 70% that don't. We have to try to somehow engage those people so that they're always involved in what we're doing and what we're interested in doing. Thank you.
Thank you. And Eric Evenson for the question on how the board could strengthen its relationship with the community, city commission, park board, and FEA.
Thank you. I think what's really important when it comes to relationships between the boards is who's elected. I think voters need to take that into consideration. You want to elect people that are good stewards of the community. I mean, I'm a teacher, I'm passionate about education, but to best serve the school board, I need to pay attention to what's going on the park board, what's going on in the city commission. And I hope that goes the same way. I hope the city commissioners are paying attention to what's going on in the school board. And I think that comes down to the voters and electing people that are going to be good stewards for our community.
Thank you. And Nikki Gulkson.
I can't add a whole lot more that anybody else hasn't already done, because I think you get into this thinking you're going to do the best you can for everybody involved. I'm glad to hear that those relationships already exist. I guess the only one I could add additional information to would be the FEA, and I'd like to see regular meetings and communications with them, because our teachers are boots on the ground. They're front and foremost, and their input is very critical to what we do. So if we can just strengthen what exists and we can make the FEA connection a little bit stronger, I think that would be of great help.
Thank you. For the next question, we will start with Jim Johnson, and that is, with more young people concerned about the impact of climate change in their lifetime, would you do anything to increase climate education or to increase sustainability practices within the schools?
Well, I'll plead a little ignorance here in that I have been out of high school quite a while, so I'm not sure how in-depth the climate conversations are happening in our high school curriculum currently. It clearly is happening. I just don't know to what degree. I do know from a green perspective, we as a school board, every time we look at a major construction project, look at what can we do to lower the carbon footprint of that project. We're in the process right now of getting ready to start the building of the Explorer Academy, which is going to be over by Lewis and Clark. There are several things that we've done in the design phase of that building to try and take a greener approach. That being said, there are other things that are not quite feasible. We really do not have the ability to put enough solar panels on top of every building covering all of our grounds to go 100% energy efficient internally. But I think that should be our goal, to get as efficient and as green as we can as a district. And I'm pretty sure we're actually doing that in our curriculum. But to that, I'd have to defer to our teaching and learning staff.
Thank you. Victoria Johnson.
That's a good question. I know climate change is a huge thing with the younger generation, including my own son, who came out to me and said, "Mom, do you know with this epidemic, the air is actually less polluted?" Which, it's interesting to hear that. So I know how important that is. And I agree with Jim that, looking into those energy efficiency and looking into the, greener and just doing the best we can. Sometimes we can't get it right, but I think just the effort, it's worth more for our students.
Thank you. Robin Key.
Thank you. I think that a good share of our students like to be concerned about climate change, and I think a lot of them don't know enough about it. So I think that I would encourage more education for them on climate change and what they can do and what we can do as a community, because our students can come home and teach us. My son does that almost every day anyway, just because he's teaching me things that he's learning in his STEM classroom. And he would love to come home and say, "Mom, I know we recycle, but how about we do this too?" And he would love to do something like that.
Thank you. And Brandy Ani.
Well, I think that I think we're doing pretty well in our schools right now. I mean, we have the recycling bins for them to put their stuff in, and then also I think the biggest thing was when Fargo did go to the recycling, which was super awesome. I was very excited about getting the extra bin. And I do think that if it is feasible and cost efficient to look at more efficient ways as far as the energy, and then also have the students come up with some ideas, or maybe they can even form like a group and then give them more education on what they need to basically learn and collaborate together in that group that they form. Thank you.
Thank you. And Eric Evenson.
Well, I think the best way to practice sustainable practices would be to use sustainable practices when we inevitably become overcrowded and need to build a new school building.
Thank you. And Nikki Gullickson.
Thank you. I do love this question. I love this topic. I am a fiend of a recycler at home, and my children will tell you that. I agree, Victoria, with your child coming home and telling you there's been a drop. Yes, emissions have dropped. Pollution has dropped 17% since we've all had to be at home. And I find that very encouraging. I'm thrilled that our kids are engaged, and I think we need to do anything we can to power that forward, be it from their STEM classrooms or whatever we can do. I think we need to support those efforts.
Thank you.
The world depends on it.
And Seth Holden.
Thank you. It's no doubt that climate change is an existential threat to our species. And the unfortunate thing is that half of this country doesn't believe it's real. Mm-hmm. And I think that we can't make changes when it comes to climate change unless everybody's on board. And I think that we could learn a lot from our kids in this regard, because they do have their finger on this pulse. And I also think anything that we can teach them in science classes about this, maybe they can come home and then they can convince their parents that don't believe in this that it is real, because we do need all hands on deck, and not even just in the United States, but worldwide. We need everybody to do something about it. Otherwise, it's just going to continue to get worse. And then we're also going to continue to have pandemics like this. That's a whole other conversation, but we need to educate the people that don't believe that this is real. And I think our kids can help us do that.
Thank you. And our next question, we'll be starting with Victoria Johnson. And that is, this is a budget question. So in terms of budgeting, what is your priority for the budget before, and so what would be your number one priority, and just what are your views on the budget?
Well, I have not sat on the school board. I have attended the school board meetings a lot of time as an audience and sit there and listen to them, talk. But what I can tell you is that until that information is released, like what kind of grants is Fargo Public School getting? You got to understand we have a Perkin 5 grant that Fargo Public School is looking in placing that into the CT program. And the question is, how much of kids are we going to serve, using that towards that, okay? And then according to the Fargo Public School, actually they're planning, it's the long-term planning, they talked about they're looking at increase in of finance when this level D setting opens. And so the question is, the students that are placed in there, are those students going to have a prior diagnosis on their IEP that they can seek the Part B of the IDEA grant for those students? So until we see all that stuff, I really don't know how I can make any suggestion on their budgeting.
Thank you. And Robin Key on budget priorities.
Thank you. This is kind of a tough question. For me, especially because I haven't seen the budget. I don't know what the school board has been focusing on. But I have many friends who are either staff or educators in the Fargo Public Schools. And I think the biggest thing to keep our students well taught and happy is to be maintaining both our teachers, our staff members, and our administrators in the schools and where they are at in the schools, because that creates, what am I looking for? It creates more, it creates a better environment for the kids if they're seeing their teachers regularly and, I saw you last year in 7th grade, but now I'm in 8th grade, but now I'm still seeing you, and it creates a better environment for the students. Thank you.
Brandiani.
Budget priorities, I don't know that I can pick exactly one, since there are so many different items we have to figure out for the budget. I would have to say a strong one that I definitely hold in my heart is the special needs. So I'm very excited about the Explorer building that is going to be implemented, and also safety as well is another one, which we have definitely spent a lot of time on safety. And then I would have to say I would definitely say the teacher pay as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Eric Evenson.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yes, and that is, so essentially what is your budget priority, the top thing you should think is prioritized, and then just the budget in general, if you have any views.
Okay, thanks. Well, when it comes to budget, you have to start with the priorities. And the priorities, of course, for education is the students. So the first priority is providing students with the best education. And now, study after study shows that the most effective practice for good education is to have good teachers. So teachers need to be a priority as well. But when it comes down to it, what you have to do is you have to look at the budget as a whole. You have to make your priorities and then go from there. You need to figure out what can we add to, what can we take from to help us reach our goals.
Thank you. And Nikki Gullickson.
Thank you. I don't know exactly what the priorities are right now, but I would say that truly teachers. I know that HR is the largest piece of our budget, and then there's also the technology piece. We need to support those teachers to be able to teach their kids in that classroom. We want our kids to come out on top as best they can to be able to function in this world. So there are a lot of different pieces. We need to support our special education kiddos. We've got to have the pieces in place to be able to do that.
Thank you. And Seth Holden.
Thanks. Teachers, first and foremost, should be the top priority. Without teachers, we have no education system. And as much as I said earlier that it's not the same, the virtual teaching, and that how teachers would really love to get back into the classroom, well, this has also proven to us that we can do it without buildings, but we can't do it without teachers. So teachers have to be the priority when it comes to the budget.
And the final answer for the budget priority question, Jim Johnson.
Thank you. Well, I think the first priority for any decision for a school board member is what's best for the students. And that usually means what's best for the staff. We currently operate on a $160 million approximately general fund budget per year, about $18 million annually for building fund. So we're a pretty large entity. The challenge we have, the number one priority is sustainability. I've been on this board long enough to see the shift from 70% of the district's revenue coming from property taxes to 70% coming from the state. We used to average about a 4.5% to 5% revenue increase per year. We're now averaging 2 to 2.5% per year, which is the challenge we have to adequately reward our staff. So we need to flip the script and figure out how to build a sustainable model going forward to live with a 2 to 2.5% revenue increase per year. And until that's done, we've got a lot of work in front of us.
Thank you. I was hoping we'd have time for one more question, but in light that we have the second session coming up, it is now time for closing statements. So with Robin, if you'd like to start with your 1-minute closing statement.
Sure. I would just like to thank you for the opportunity. This is the only forum that I have participated in. So I would like to thank the League of Women Voters for the opportunity. And I would encourage anyone voting to please do your research and vote for the candidates that align with your views. Thank you.
Thank you. Brandiani.
Yes, thank you so much for the League of Women Voters for this invitation to be able to speak about the school board and why we would like to run. Yes, I have really enjoyed what I've been doing the last 4 years, and I feel that we have accomplished quite a bit in the last 4 years with everything that we have done for the school board. So I do encourage everybody to get out there and vote. Voting is very, very important. No matter who you vote for, just get out there and vote. And thank you very much for having me here.
Thank you. Eric Evenson.
Thanks. So why am I running? Why are 13 people running for the school board? I think the community sees that there's a bit of a problem with the way the board is currently set up. You know, different things, different opinions. For me, my daughter's going to be in kindergarten next year. She's just starting the journey. And I want to be a part of that. I want to use my time and talents because I'm in education. And so I want to use my abilities and skills to help guide us for a long-term future success, especially with my young kids, you know, just getting into school. So that's why I'm running, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Nikki Gullickson.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for doing this evening, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for providing this opportunity. It's nice to be able to speak to people because we can't really go door to door right now. My biggest pleas would be two things, and that would be please complete your censuses, because we need to have everybody counted to be able to get the right money aligned for education. And my second one would be vote. Do your research, find someone that aligns with your values, and support them wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Thank you. Seth Holden, your closing statement.
Yeah, I would like to thank the League of Women Voters for this opportunity. Yes, campaigning is a little difficult in these times, and so this opportunity is great. I would, yes, encourage everyone to vote. I can't stress enough how important our local elections really are and how they affect everybody's lives in our community. I would definitely like to agree with you on the census. We need the correct funding, and we need the correct count of people. And I would just like to say that with teacher morale as low as it is right now, I think that I have the positive and the compassionate person to raise that morale, because they are our most important asset. So thank you.
Thank you. Jim Johnson.
First of all, I want to thank the entire community for hopefully tuning in to this great show this afternoon or evening. And again, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for providing this opportunity. And a special shout out to the other 6 people up here with me and the 6 that are going to come in later. Throwing your name on a ballot is kind of a scary deal, especially the very first time. So I want to thank you all for taking the opportunity and the courage to serve your community.
Thank you. And Victoria Johnson.
I want to say thank you to the League of Women Voters and everybody who's up here. Tonight, we heard many questions regarding boundary changes, budgeting. Those issues are going to arise from teachers' contract, so forth. You want to make sure you're voting for somebody with a different perspective that's coming out with that can look at both what's happening inside with our school and what's also happening from the bottom ground up. As an advocate, I work with families, and I've been in school buildings supporting families, sitting in IEP meetings, so I understand teachers' struggles. I see it and I hear it, and I've been on the board and addressing the school board with my concerns. So you want to make sure that you're voting for somebody who's going to speak on your behalf and also advocate for the whole children and our teachers as well. So, and I'll just add something is that you can go on my Facebook, Victoria Johnson, or the Fargo Public School, and you can find all my platforms and what I stand on.
Thank you. And again, thank you to all of the candidates. Thank you to the City of Fargo and their staff for putting this on tonight. And please view this, and all of our other forums will be available online. And I would say get out and vote, but this year just make sure you're getting your ballot and getting that out in the mail for the election before the deadline on June 9th. Thank you, everyone, and we will sanitize and have the second session in about 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello and welcome to session 2 of the League of Women Voters Candidates Forum for the Fargo School Board June 9th election. Thank you to the candidates for being here and the City of Fargo and staff for hosting the forum and providing the services of filming and making these videos accessible to the public. My name is Rachel Hoffman and I am with the League of Women Voters of the Red River Valley. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization that encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. The primary way we do this is through our voter forums, and the forums for the June 9th elections, including the City Commission Forum, the County Commission for District 3, the Fargo School Board, sessions 1 and 2, because we have 13 candidates, we did have to put them into 2 different sessions, and the Park Board will be available on public access and also online through our Facebook page and on YouTube. So, the questions for tonight's forum came from members of the public through open calls for questions from the League. This is different than we usually do it due to COVID. We're kind of practicing our social distancing, so we do not have an audience today. But we did receive the questions from the public prior. The candidates have not seen the questions, and they're the same questions that were also asked to the session 1 school board candidates. We're going to start with a 1-minute opening statement and then go into the questions with 1-minute responses, and we'll end with a 1-minute closing statement. There's a timer at the back of the room. And we will get started with Janaea McLeod-Hansen's opening statement.
Good evening. My name is Janaea McLeod-Hansen. I am a proud mother of 2 children and live in North Fargo. The reason I'm running for school board is because I want to try to improve or focus on strengthening communities and building trust. That's one of the pillars of the reason I'm running. I believe that continuous and open communication between students, teachers, administrators, and the school board members is vital to improving trust among all of the stakeholders and leads to enhanced student achievement, which should always be the target of Fargo Public Schools. So as I look at the community and I look at my kids and I look at how I would like the community to be, that's one of the first things that I think about or thought about as I was thinking about doing this. An additional thing that I'd like to focus on is keeping children and teachers safe. So our teachers are at the front lines of the emerging behavioral and mental health challenges of kids. So I want to make sure that I have the opportunity to focus on that and support the district, the teachers, and the students as we move through those challenging times.
Thank you. And Tracy Newman, your opening statement.
Well, thank you so much to the League of Women Voters for hosting this tonight. I am the mother of 3 children who are active in the Fargo Public Schools. I am a community pediatrician and a public health educator. I've really dedicated my life to being a voice for kids, something I'm very passionate about. Prior to medicine, I was a high school teacher and coach. Both my parents were educators. My mother was a principal for many years. I am not running on a single issue focus, nor do I have a political agenda. I am genuinely interested in the success of the over 11,000 students in this district. I have good analytical, leadership, and collaborative skills to help move this district forward. I currently serve as the Centennial PTO president, where I've been a board member for many years. I've served on the district calendar planning committee. I have served on the board of the North Dakota chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics, and I am endorsed by the Fargo Education Association and the Northern Plains Labor Council. Thank you.
Thank you. And Stacy Piowski, your opening statement.
Hello. I'm a small town North Dakota girl. I was raised on a farm. I'm the oldest of 6 children. We were taught hard work and the value of education. Many of my family members are educators. 20 years ago, I moved to Fargo and married my high school sweetheart, Jerry. We are both small business entrepreneurs. All 4 of our children are currently attending Fargo Public Schools. I'd work to implement accountability measures to ensure continuous improvement for all students. Having high-quality education in our community ensures our graduates will be ready to contribute to our local economy, which affects all community members, including those without school-age children. Being a small business owner, I understand the value of responsibly preparing for the future. We work hard for every dollar, prioritizing wants and needs, and keeping debt to a minimum. I would look for ways to be more conservative in areas that do not directly impact students. I will work hard to improve teacher morale, trust, and integrity. I believe in creating avenues for stakeholder involvement. Having input from a variety of points of view can only make us stronger.
Thank you. John Rodenbiker.
Hi, thank you, League of Women Voters. I am John Rodenbiker, and I'm running for re-election to the Fargo Board of Education for the same reason that I ran 4 years ago. I love the opportunity and promise of our public schools. Our public schools welcome every kid who walks through their door with the promise of an excellent education and equal opportunity to realize their highest potential. I'm also running because I still have a vested interest in FPS and our future of our community. I live in the Hawthorne neighborhood with my wife, 2 kids, and our 19-year-old cat, Trixie. Elizabeth will be finishing her 8th grade year at Ben Franklin next week and starting her career at North, and Jack is finishing 4th grade at Claire Barton. I'm running for re-election because to have strong schools, we need a strong school board that is accessible, transparent, and most of all, committed to the strong and bright future of all of FPS and of our community. I'll continue to serve by first listening to learn, then acting thoughtfully and with integrity, and I'll care. Please vote for Rodenbiker for school board. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mary Schultz, your opening statement.
Thank you. I have been in the district for several years, and I've been have over 40 years of experience working with and for children. I've been the PTA president of several PTAs, and I've worked on many committees and task forces whose focus was comprehensive and balanced programs for our students. And as a mother of 2, I have firsthand experience of what it is to work with our teachers and supporting them and advocating for children. And I will promote open communication and transparency, support the students, the educators, all while being fiscally responsible to our taxpayers, and I will work to close the achievement gap by providing the training and support needed to help every child succeed.
Thank you. And Christy Elrick.
Thank you. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for the opportunity tonight. I'm Christy Elrick. I currently serve on the Fargo Board of Education for the past 4 years. I grew up in the northeast corner of North Dakota with 4 siblings. I've been a resident of Fargo since 1983. My husband and I have 2 children. One is a Davies graduate at NDSU now. My son is just wrapping up his sophomore year at Davies, and we live in the Bennett neighborhood. Over the years, I've been very involved in our community, and community is key in being an active and successful school board. I volunteer, I've served on several boards, including being the past chair of the Chamber of Commerce of Fargo-Moorhead. Over my career, I've reported to board of directors as well as serving on them. I have a deep understanding of different types of boards, budgets, and fiscal responsibility. I'm a small business owner that understands what hard work means. I have educators in my family, and I'm running for re-election so that we can continue to reach out and to advocate for all students. Thank you.
Thank you. And we will get started with the first question. And Tracy Newman, we'll start with you for that. And the first question is, how do you think schools should address reopening during the times of COVID?
Well, this is a big and important question. As someone with expertise in public health and as a board-certified pediatrician, I'm really uniquely qualified to help guide our community and our schools with this huge issue. Until we have adequate treatment or a vaccine for this, we know that we are risking future waves of infection. And so I think we need to look at how that's going to look, whether that means obviously a slow return to in-person learning, perhaps phased reopenings, and we need to be prepared as a district for intermittent closures and what that will look like with maintaining or continuing our digital education. Specifically, I would be interested in collaborating with our local and state level public health for their specific guidance. I think we need to look at our local and national case rates, our testing availability, our availability of limiting spread once we're back in the buildings, and keeping our students safe. Thank you.
Thank you. And Stacy, same question.
As we transition back to school in the fall, there will more than likely be accommodations made to address social distancing guidelines. Some examples can include lunch in the classroom versus the cafeteria, staggered schedules, increased sanitation. There are some great growth opportunities for the district here too. What additional education opportunities might we be able to offer students through distance learning? Could we address capacity issues with modified schedules and distance learning?
It will be important for the district to use this time in the next few months to reflect, study, research, and develop a strong plan for the future. It will be necessary to gather feedback from parents, students, staff, and the community, as well as from other school districts, to create the best plan possible to better meet the needs for all of our students.
Thank you. John, same question.
Thank you. First of all, the number one priority has to be to keep the safety of our students and our staff front of mind. After that, one of the primary jobs of the board is hiring a superintendent capable of running a district as large and complex as ours, especially during times of crisis. And so I will expect our superintendent, who we did a great job of hiring 2 years ago, to consult our public health experts, including Cass County Public Health, Sanford, Essentia, North Dakota Department of Health, and the CDC as our plans are built. Again, keeping the safety of our staff and our students in mind. After that, I also will expect, because he's demonstrated this, that we will be listening and communicating transparently to our board members, our staff, and our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary Schultz.
I think we need to take it slow. I've seen some of the suggestions that the CDC has put out recently, and I think that we're going to have to work on how to keep the children distanced and the staggering. I've read about the lunch being served in the classrooms. It's going to take a lot of work and a lot of time and actually extra money in the budget to keep the buildings clean and ready for the students. And we're going to have to work diligently to make sure we maintain the upkeep of that plan.
Thank you. And Christy Ulrich, on how you think schools should address reopening during the times of COVID.
I think it's really important for us to take a look at the big picture. I have a spouse who is a frontline worker in healthcare, and we've had several discussions, and it's really important not only to look at what's happening today, but what will be happening in the future. As Tracy mentioned, we don't know when those ebbs and flows are going to hit and when those things will slow down or when they'll be coming forward. So we need to be nimble as a school district, but it's really important for us to rely on the experts in this. Dr. Gandhi has great relationships, not only with Essentia and Sanford, however, he also has relationships with the public health, DPI, and they give recommendations with North Dakota Smart Openings, and it's really important for us to communicate and have that collaboration piece, work in partnership.
Thank you. And Janaea.
I would echo everything that the panelists said. I also work with somebody who's on the front lines as being a risk manager at a healthcare institution here in North Dakota. So I think it's important here in Cass County. We have some unique challenges given the population, and daily I'm watching the rate, right? So facts and data are an important part of this, as well as the students and the teachers. So we have an aging population, or a population of teachers that need to be considered, and also kids, both with the health issues they may have or their mental health issues. I just recently got to experience what it's like when my son spent too much time playing video games because both his parents are working. Both my husband and I have been working from home for the last 9 weeks, and my son really started to struggle with his mental health over the weekend. And so really understanding the challenges the families are facing, understanding the challenges of the staff in the district, and by understanding that, also using the facts and data that are available from the CDC, public health in the state of North Dakota, and the public health folks here in Cass County.
Thank you. And so for our next question, we'll be starting with Stacy, and that is, how do you feel about boundaries and building changes? In particular, this questioner was wondering how you feel about a boundary change that would make families drive by one school to get to their new designated school.
There are many more options than only two. The city of Fargo is linear, and because a majority of growth is happening on the south side of town, the enrollment projections completed both by the RSP Consultant Group and FSP demonstrate year after year continued growth impacting both Discovery and Davies. There are many factors to consider. I believe in making a data-driven decision that would follow our guiding principles, be a long-term solution, fiscally responsible, engage the public, and support all students in our district. The second part of the question was walkability, neighborhoods. Fargo has 38 neighborhoods, and we have 23 schools. So I think neighborhoods really value their neighborhood schools, and the walkability is a big part of the data-driven decision to decide where to move kids. We don't want to move them across town. We want to keep them close to their schools so they are able to bike and partner with safe routes to school.
Thank you. John.
Thank you. I supported the feeder system and the new building prior to the pandemic. I thought it was a really bold vision for the future of Fargo and of Fargo Public Schools that also recognized the changing demographics of our city and the population trends of where people are living and how they're living. That said, we need to recognize right now that we're in a time of crisis, and the financial risks due to the pandemic, and especially from our state revenues, means that the financially responsible decision right now would be to support some sort of a boundary change to address the risk of equitable experiences at Discovery and Davies due to their capacity issues. I think the capacity availability at North and South is not a problem, but instead an exciting opportunity as well for innovative programming that we should be exploring once we've solved these issues at Discovery and Davies. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary.
I think that we're going to have to work on this a couple different ways. We know we're going to have to build a new building. We just don't have the exact time and date of when we'll start. But I think moving the boundaries and trying to work with the families to get them, into the other areas so that we can relieve some of the pressure is a good idea. We have to keep the communication open with them and keep reiterating what the plan is to keep them engaged so that we don't wind up with the problems that we have when the public gets upset with us. And we need to find a way to support all of the students, not just the ones we're moving, the ones that stay where they're at. And I think that we can do that, but it's going to take a lot of work.
Thank you. And Christy.
Thank you. I did vote in favor of a new school at our April board meeting. That was prior to the pandemic being pushed to the level that it's at. And at the current time, I think fiscally that would not be the most responsible thing for us to do because of the crisis that we are in. However, I do think that it's going to be inevitable. And I believe as a school board, we need to be proactive rather than reactive. And I think we need to be creative. And we have had discussions about what we can use and utilize some of the vacant space for in our buildings. We've talked about additional CTE offerings. We've talked about STEM offerings. We've talked about health sciences, those types of things. So we really need to be open and being able to take a look at the big picture and communicate openly. I was part of the Building Usage and Capacity Task Force last year, and I was the liaison to that. And there was a lot of conversation at that time. And we have to come together, and we will never make everyone happy. And so therefore, it's a hard decision for the board.
Thank you. And Janaea.
I would say that the question boundaries versus build is unique in the time that we're in. If you think about the distance education and learning that's occurring today, and you think about where the capacity constraints are, we have capacity constraints as we think about the high schools. If you look at the state of Minnesota, there's opportunities for online learning there in that age range. And so as I was thinking about this question, I thought, how do we know we're going to have capacity issues in 5 to 7 years? How do we know that our students in that age range are going to receive the same education, or the education in the same way that they are today? So I think that the fiscally responsible thing to do was what the board decided to do as far as not building because the economy is an unknown. I think that the data that's available with the student population and its locations is an important part of the discussion. And if a boundary is moved, there needs to be some compassion and empathy for those students who are impacted so that those families can understand how they can maintain the capability of the children in the school and the family's ability to maintain their work-life balance.
Thank you. And the final answer for the question regarding the boundaries in buildings, Tracy.
Thank you. Yes, when we look at current kindergarten enrollment numbers and the projection models for the future, it certainly is clear that we ultimately will need a new middle and likely high school in our district, particularly in the South. But as people have stated, I'm just not sure that in the middle of a international pandemic and economic crisis and times of increased digital learning that now is the appropriate time to do that. We certainly have unutilized or underutilized space existing in our district, and I would like to see that maximized. I think this is a big decision. If there was an easy answer, we would have already had it. So I think listening to the constituents and listening to teachers and listening just to everyone's input is really important, and using current information given our current times to benefit the most amount of children in our district.
Thank you. For the next question, we'll be starting with John, and that is, how could the board strengthen its relationship with the community, city commission, park board, and FEA?
Thank you, Rachel. Currently, I think the Board of Education has good relationships with the city and parks, and particularly between those organizations at the administrative level, there's close collaboration and regular meetings, and I'm pretty happy with how that's going. We have liaisons from the board on different commissions within the city, commission and operations, and we review our liaison assignments throughout or every year. Relationship with the community is something we think about constantly. It's a major topic of discussion of the past year of our board's communication committee, and our State of the Schools event is a major component of that. And I encourage everyone in our community to pay attention for when that comes around annually and the opportunities to engage with that. Definitely recognize that relations with the FEA were strained by the end of our negotiation system last year. We've had some time to cool off, and we're talking as communications and negotiations committees as how to fix that. And our two presidents, the board president and the FAA president, have reached out and are meeting regularly to address those concerns as well and build a future. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mary?
I believe that we need to make sure we have the open communication and transparency with the community, the different commissions, the FEA, families. Some of them don't feel that they're being included or have all of the information they might need to be able to take care of their children and make sure their children's education reaches the level they need to be. And we need to work hand in hand with the FEA to support the teachers and the staff. They've had a lot of issues back and forth that we know of. And so we need to strive to keep those issues in front of us and looking at them every time we meet so that we can address them.
Thank you. Christy?
Yes, so we have done a lot of things. Jennifer Mastert is the president of FEA, along with our board president, Robin Nelson. The two of them have gone out and really are making an effort to build collaboration between FEA and the school board and the district. And I commend both of them for their hard work on that. I think it's really important to do that and to strengthen the relationships. In regards to planning city parks, those types of things, I've been the chair of the planning committee the last 2 years, and numerous times we've had city personnel come in and give us results and what they're doing and kind of an overview of where they're headed and what they're planning on. So we do have that open line of communication. I think it was stated earlier that the parks and the city meet regularly with Dr. Gandhi. And so it's a great relationship that continues to be open and transparent, and we will continue working on that, and including with the FEA and with our presidents and how we can move forward with better collaboration and partnerships.
Thank you. Janaea?
Can you repeat the question?
Yes. How could the board strengthen its relationship with the community, city commission, park board, and FEA?
I think the first thing is transparency and understanding what the board's job is and what our privy of responsibility is, so that people have set expectations, or the expectations that the community and our stakeholders have. They understand what we're supposed to be doing, so that that's clear. I think the next thing is with the FEA is really, again, transparency and really trying to figure out what's the common ground that the FEA has and the school board has with the teachers and student achievement being at the forefront of that. If that's well defined, then you can measure whether or not there is success or whether or not both sides are getting what they're looking for out of the relationship. As far as the park board and the city commission, as I understand it, we already have relationships. The Fargo School Board already has fairly strong relationships with those two entities, so I would continue that. And it sounds like we have a fairly effective strategy for liaising with those groups and serving jointly with those groups, so I would continue that. Really, the key is open and transparent communication and building trust and maintaining trust with the organizations.
Thank you. And Tracy?
Yes, just as I believe that the overlap of health and education is so important, really anyone in our community who is interested in children in our city should be collaborating. I mean, I'm all for this, and it sounds like we do have a great existing relationship, but I'm interested in, learning from those other groups what's working well for them, what's not working well, what can we improve on, how can we work together. Again, we should all be uniting to look at things like pushing policy change or anything that will better the students in our district. Regarding the FEA, I believe a relationship with them is vital. I believe strongly that the teachers are the greatest resource in our district, and their input is crucial to these major decisions that we make moving forward. So I would really foster that relationship. Thank you.
Thank you. And Stacy?
I've reached out to over 60 teachers and administrators during the last few months gathering feedback. I am all about collaborating with the FEA. They are a vital part of Fargo Public Schools. FPS is fortunate to have this group of dedicated people partnering with us. I will continue to be approachable so we can work together as a team and build a relationship on trust to accomplish our shared goals. I'm all about collaborating with other entities like the City of Fargo and the Park Board. Communication is key to addressing and solving many of our challenges.
Thank you. And our next question, we will start with Mary, and that is, with more young people concerned about the impact of climate change in their lifetime, would you do anything to increase climate education or to increase sustainability practices within schools?
I would. I think that we need to focus on being green, and I know we do have some of those things in place now as far as our buildings and our carbon footprint. And we are teaching the students more about the environment and the sustainability of our environment, and I think that we need to continue and to do that and to give them more is in the way of educational offerings and to help them so that they can learn the responsibilities of keeping their world clean.
Thank you. Christy?
Thank you. I think we need to take a look at the climate check and really respect the earth, and we need to do that within the refines of the taxpayers' dollars in our community. With the Explore Academy that is being built, that will be built next to Lewis and Clark, we as a board really took a hard look at what can we do for more efficiencies to make more of a zero imprint or a more green print. And then when we were looking at the feasibility study for the new building that we are not going to do at this time, we took a look at it and said, if we made it a zero carbon footprint, what would we do? And it's about a 50% increase in price if we were to do a zero carbon footprint. So it's extremely expensive, but it's something that is on their minds, and it's something that we are talking about and looking at and doing the best that we can within the confines of the taxpayer dollar.
Thank you. Janaya?
I would say that climate change is something that all of us should be worried about. And in the Fargo Public Schools, the first thing that came to mind for me is where are we at from a LEED certification perspective with each of our buildings. So LEED certification being internationally recognized certification and evaluation of our buildings, and what would it look like to move toward LEED certification? How could we demonstrate to the children and the teachers that we're serious about lowering our carbon footprint in our school district? It was interesting. One of the things that's happened because of COVID is our carbon emissions footprint, or carbon emissions has dropped 17% globally since the beginning of the year. What does that mean for our kids? What's that mean for the future? And how do we continue to foster the understanding of how important the climate is to our children and the next generation? So I think that having people polarizing or unpolarizing, Greta Thunberg's one of the folks that students are really identifying with. She's in their age range. Being able to have mentors like that be available to students in our district, I think is also important.
Thank you. And Tracy?
I think the fact that the students are worried about this and it's on their mind is wonderful. And I think we're really charged as adults and community leaders to lead by example for them. And what better way to do that than with green initiatives in our school? Of course, they need to be cost effective and sustainable, as people have said. Research tells us that children who grow and learn in environments with cleaner air and more adequate lighting, they do better in school. They have lower rates of asthma. They have lower rates of respiratory infections. I mean, this is really vital for creating healthy children in our community. I'm also interested in new initiatives in our school and what that might look like. There's districts around the country that are having children learn how to cook and prepare their food, sometimes even grow their food, and what that looks like and the carbon emissions. We could certainly use courses that would combine these types of life skills and incorporate things with economics and history and social sciences. I think the possibilities are wide open.
Thank you. And Stacy.
Some great answers so far. I'll just add, I know one of our high schools has an environmental club, so we can kind of look to our kids for different ideas and different initiatives that they would like to promote. This particular one promotes recycling. They partnered also with Nutrition Services last year to try out metal silverware rather than the disposable silverware. They also partnered with Booster Club to provide plants in classrooms, if it was okay with the teacher. So they are just coming up with some really creative ideas to do more for the environment.
Thank you. And John.
I'm really happy this is the question tonight. Climate change is a huge existential problem that needs systemic changes. It's not enough to swap out to LED light bulbs or introduce recycling programs. This is really big. I introduced a policy for consideration to the board last year that would have directed the superintendent to make our district net zero carbon emitter by the year 2030. It was not passed, but it started the discussion. We considered LEED certification in building net zero and net zero ready buildings for the Explorer Academy and for what would have been the new building. And the fact is that they are exceptionally more expensive. Not considering LEED certification, but just being net zero, where you're a net zero emitter with just the HVAC sort of situations, 50% more expensive. And so it is something that we need to either commit to or we need to be required to do this by regulations. I think a bold idea for our community, and going back to the previous question, would be to consider a community solar field, similar to what we've done with the landfill, and taking advantage of the emissions from there and turning it into a revenue stream, as well as being good for our community. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have time for actually just only one more question. And so with the final question, Christy, we'll start with you. And this question is around budget. So in terms of budgeting, what is the thing that you believe should be at the top, or what is your budget priority than any other thoughts you have on the school board's budget?
We have a very complex budget. We've got, we're the second or the fourth largest employer in the community with a rather large budget. I believe our general fund budget is about 165 million, and then we have our building budget as well. And so with that, we really need to take a look at the budget as a whole. I can't say that I would pick one line item out of it. About 80% of our budget goes to benefits and payroll, which is a large portion of it. So right now we are in the budget building phase where all the department heads are looking through it, and then they bring it back to us. And so I don't have one item that is my priority. I think my priority is overall achievement, student achievement, and how do we best do that and get that as our number one goal.
Thank you. And Janaea.
So not having seen the budget or having an understanding of what the Fargo Public School or Fargo School Board budget looks like, I'd say my first priority is understanding what's in the budget, what additional funding streams might be available, understanding a bit more about what the unfunded mandates look like that FPS has to manage through, and then looking further in, starting to really understand the compensation and benefits of the staff, really taking a look at holistically, from retirement through healthcare onto salary. What does that how does that stack up with careers or jobs similar in the community? And then finally, really diving into how can we support both special needs and gifted and talented kids. One of the things that I've had the opportunity to be a part of is a family that had over 70 foster care children come through their home, and my parents adopted 4 kids. All of all of which have special needs. My brother was in a wheelchair and could never walk or talk, so he partook of West Fargo Public Schools, and I got to see what it looked like to have the support for that. So I want to make sure that the support's there for those kids as well.
Thank you. And Tracy?
Well, certainly we know that one of the most challenging responsibilities of a school board is adopting a fiscally sound budget. I think it really requires the ability to listen to the needs of our staff and our community and our student body of our district. I think in times of increased expenses that school board members should aim to really utilize our district funds without impacting our student learning or our effective teaching. Our decisions should be based on sound evidence of what works. And again, it was stated that our personnel accounts for 80% of our general fund, and so we should be smart and flexible with our staffing. I think that Fargo Public Schools should look at streamlining payments and constantly reevaluating the continued need for certain services within our district. I'm all for bargaining for the best deal on district supplies. We should look at cost sharing with our community stakeholders, and then encouraging energy efficient behaviors within our district buildings. Thanks for the question.
Thank you. And Stacy?
I'm committed to being a good steward of our taxpayers' money. I would also like to look for ways we could change our budget that wouldn't impact our students. I would also encourage looking into new sources of revenue, grants, catering services, fees in general, facility rentals, naming rights, software design, online education courses offered to other districts, tuition agreements, or all things I would support the board to consider. I would be interested in seeing the research on the ideas to make a better database decision moving forward to create more revenue for the district, because I believe we need a more sustainable salary matrix for our teachers. We need to make the teacher pay more competitive in Fargo. Money should be allocated for salary increases. We should use the salary matrix, but also compare our benefits against other school districts. And we need to find ways to be more creative to meet those salary concerns and a model that is sustainable for FPS.
Thank you. And John, the question on budget priorities.
The number one priority for every board member should be the achievement of our kids. And that achievement is enabled by our people. And so I believe our budget reflects that. As has been noted, 80% of our budget goes to our people, and more than half of that is going to our teachers. In addition to that, I'm really proud of the investment in the safety and security of our students and our staff that's been made by the board over the past 4 years. We've invested in the Student Wellness and Family Facilitator Program, which has put social workers into our schools. We've invested in positive behavioral interventionists and therapists to help the kids that are showing some of these upsetting behaviors learn how to behave appropriately, and to assist our teachers in the classroom who should be there teaching. We've partnered closely with our local law enforcement, and we've invested in a security and safety manager and coordinator. I think our budget well reflects the priorities of our community and myself. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mary?
I think that our priority should be our teaching staff, our children, their achievement, keeping everyone safe. And I think that we do have a good start on that, and I think that we can go farther with it, and we need to be creative with how we bring in more money and what we do with it and how we plan for it.
Thank you. And we will start with our closing statements, and we're back to Janaea, if you would like to start with your closing statement.
Well, first, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for the opportunity for myself and the rest of the candidates in this forum. I think it's not having run for public office before, it's a very good way to step into this type of activity. So a little bit more about myself. Professionally, I've had to prove myself as being effective at managing really complex issues. I've lived around the world. I called Fargo my home when I was in my youth, and I returned in 2011 to raise my family. So there's a lot of issues facing Fargo Public Schools and the Fargo School Board, so I'm really good and have a lot of experience at managing complex issues. I really would like to use those issues to work through any organizational, cultural, school safety, and engagement issues that we're facing here, while always being mindful of our primary goal, which is the optimum student achievement. One of the things that I've managed or that I've seen in the community is really needing to make sure our workforce is ready right? Our kids are ready to support the businesses here in town. And so it's really important that we understand what those needs are so that that next workforce, our future workforce, can allow the community to continue to thrive. Thank you.
Thank you. Tracy.
During this time of national emergency and pandemic, I strongly believe that physician voices are vital. The American Academy of Pediatrics really urges every school district to have a pediatrician or a physician advising them. As someone with expertise in public health and as a physician, I really believe I'm uniquely qualified to help our district during these times. A few things I would be interested in. We've already discussed how and when to safely reopen our schools in the face of COVID-19, fostering physical activity and improved nutrition within our schools, improving school attendance by assisting in managing chronic health issues in our students, such as diabetes and asthma, concussion management programs, childhood immunizations, mental health is one of my top priorities, emergency response procedures, creating safety standards for our teachers and our students, and really just working with the community to develop sound health policies. Ultimately, I want to promote alliances between our medical home, family home, and education home. Thank you.
Thank you. And Stacy.
Everything I do is for kids. My life is surrounded by kids. My experiences have led me here. My commitment and understanding of public education shows. I have 4 children attending Fargo Public Schools. I have been an active parent, and I am committed to the education of all youth, regardless of backgrounds and ability levels. I have the business acumen and leadership qualities necessary to be a valuable board member. I am passionate, driven, and results-oriented. I believe this district needs a new direction. We are currently facing many challenges: improving teacher morale, achievement scores, declining and increasing enrollment, just to name a few. I will be purposeful in my approach to community engagement and work to understand each side of every issue. I believe in a great education for every child. I would be honored to serve you on the Fargo Board of Education as a representative of our entire community.
Thank you. And John.
Thank you again, League of Women Voters. It has been an honor to participate in this forum as the League celebrates its century of helping voters exercise their right and their responsibility to vote, and the 100 years since the ratification of the 19th Amendment. Over the past 4 years, I've worked hard to earn your vote and to earn your trust. With my commitment to this service, my engagement with the community, and with thoughtful leadership and integrity. I led the board's past 2 negotiations with the teachers, and while those negotiations were tough, they did result in 2 joint agreements. I've served as vice president, elected by my fellow board members the past year, and I've started this conversation about the climate crisis and our district's responsibility to a bright future for all of our kids. There's been challenges in our schools, there will be challenges in our schools. Over the next 4 years, I'll continue to take on those challenges and fulfill the promise and opportunity of our public schools. Our schools are great, we want to keep them great, and I will listen, act thoughtfully, and I'll care. Please vote for Roden Biker for School Board. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary.
Thank you to the League of Women Voters for facilitating this forum tonight and the opportunity to participate. My goals are to ensure that all students have the opportunity and the tools needed to succeed, while also speaking for those who may not have an active voice. I will promote open communication and transparency, making sure families and the community are included in the decision-making process. I will support students, teachers, and staff every day, listening to their needs and partnering to build strong relationships. And I will work to close the achievement gap for all students, providing the tools, the training, and support to help every child succeed. I believe in support and access and integration to all public education for all students.
Thank you. And the final closing statement, Christy.
Thank you. And first off, thank you to the League of Women Voters for the forum this evening. There are many factors to consider when voting in our upcoming election. This is going to be a pivotal year for Fargo Public Schools and for our community. My experience serving on the board will be beneficial to our students, our teachers, our schools, and the community. I'm experienced, a proven leader, an engaged parent, fiscally responsible, and most importantly, an advocate for all students and their achievement. I would appreciate your confidence in your vote as we move together so we can achieve more. Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes the second session of the school board election forums. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to the city of Fargo and for the staff for helping out with this. And I encourage everyone viewing to make sure you have your ballot and to get it in and postmarked by June 9th, and to get educated and get voting. And all of our forums will be available. We are going to wrap this up, do a little sanitizing, and we will be back with the Park Board Forum in about 5 minutes. Thank you.